Welcome to Unite Now, where we bring Unity to you, wherever you are.
Hello, welcome everyone to our Meshes Simplified, going from 3ds Max to Unity. Wherever you're joining from, I am from Southern California over here, so it's nice, sunny in Southern California, 10 a.m. over here. So if you're joining from whichever part of the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or even hope you're having a good night wherever you're joining from. So if you can see right now, we would love to hear, I know some people have already posted over there, we would still love to hear from a lot more people how long you've been using 3ds Max, and what do you think your level of expertise is? 1 being you're just getting started, and 5 is you're an absolute expert. 1, I see a lot of 1s there. 4, I can tell about me. I've been using 3ds Max since its inception. I think it was 98. I've started using the DOS version of the predecessor, which is 3ds4. And then I was also certified in both Max and Maya for the longest time. So I would say I was a 4 at some point. I never, ever considered myself a 5 in anything. What about you, Stephen?
I've been using Max for, oh boy, I can't remember when I started using it, but I had started working in Maya back in probably about 98.
Right.
Right around the same time. And then I started working at a place, I would think it's early 2000s, where we were using Maya and Max. So had to switch back and forth all the time.
Very cool. Very cool. Cool. So we see a lot of 1s over there, some 4s, some 10 years of Maya experience. And, I always felt like, if you know 3ds Max or Maya, either or, I mean, you can go back and forth pretty easily.
Yeah.
I used to always teach that way. I used to always work that way. I used to always kind of transfer the knowledge. Also, guys, if you can see our Unity Connect group, bit.ly link is over there. We'll talk about it more later. But if you haven't joined it, I would highly, highly, highly recommend join it. You have some amazing people over there, posting comments, and you can interact with a lot of fellow learners. So with that, who are we? So I am Sandeep Kulkarni, talking to you right now. I am an education program manager here at Unity Technologies. So part of my job as an educational program manager, you may wonder what I do. So I work with teachers across secondary and post-secondary institutions and create teacher training content for them. I also work with our live learning team, and I handle the operations across all live learning. And with me, we have Stephen today. Stephen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Stephen Studyvin. I'm a 3D artist and animation instructor. I've actually been teaching pretty much full-time for the last 6-7 years, using a variety of software, using Unity and using Maya. I actually started getting into using Substance Painter and Substance Designer, which is really cool. And so I've been actually working with Unity for over a year now, almost 2 years, creating a lot of content, creating a lot of workflows, and and actually I helped with the Substance to Unity workflow, which is really cool. So just a little plug there, shameless plug. Check out that content on Unity Learn, and it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Very nice. Very nice. And with us today, we have our awesome moderators. Without the moderators, these sessions are pretty much incomplete. So we have Daniel, we have Ethan, all the way from London, and we have Michael and James. So a big thank you to the moderators right away. So these folks are the folks who will be answering your questions in the Q&A, and if you have any comments in the chat. So keep an eye for those moderators. So just going through the session outline over here, folks, we will talk about the Zoom layout in a second, and we'll also talk about the session guidelines. So if you've never attended a Learn session before, then you might want to keep eye on these icons. So you'll see some slides that we go through. Whenever you see that little red stop sign icon, that is where you're watching. And I highly, highly recommend this. This is how I used to teach, and I still teach this way. Is, sometimes, Stephen might be doing some steps and you might be wanting to catch up and you won't be able to. So please watch. We will give you time to catch up with the steps. So that's when the second, you'll see a little slide with that thumbs up, do. So this is where you're working within the editor and you're pretty much replicating the steps that Stephen has done. And then you'll see another icon over there, which is the Explore, which is when Stephen will be telling you a lot of tips and tricks. And you will be passively listening, but at the same time, you're exploring in the editor. So those of you who've joined earlier live sessions, you know this is how we love to teach, and this is how I feel it's the best way to learn. It's, you watch, you do, and then you explore. And we also have some, we'll talk about the Learn site in a second, but we also have some 3ds Max to Unity challenges we're going to talk about. We got 3 different challenges, and those are, setting up the exporter and the integration. We'll go in detail when we get to those. We're also going to talk about the FBX files and how FBX files link prefabs and export settings within Unity. And we'll also talk about LODs in 3ds Max. Now, if you don't know the term LOD, don't worry about it. We will be talking about that too. And then there's also a little section we'll talk about how you can take the lunar lander and you will start to load that in 3ds Max and so on. And we'll still have a good time, like around 5 minutes, I would say, for Q&A and wrap up. See still a few people joining. That's pretty cool. Again, if you've never done a Zoom session with us before, the ideal Zoom layout, if you have a question, please put those questions in the Q&A. Our moderators, our awesome moderators, are always there, and they will be answering your questions. And if you have a comment, if you have a certain comment that you feel that it applies to everyone, then post that comment in the chat. And keep an eye on the polls. If we have any polls today, then we will be posting those polls. So again, the Q&A is, for technical questions, and anything else, please post in the chat. Also, here's some ground rules. We always like to cover these ground rules. If you're new here, lost, don't worry. We always upload these recordings, and these recordings are always going to be available to you for watching later. Some people, like to watch, soak in all the information, then they like to rewatch and like to do it. And that's totally fine. That's a great way of learning. Some people are experts in 3ds Max and maybe Unity both, and you might want to follow along. That's totally fine. Make sure you also downloaded the Unity project and you're following along. So that's the bit.ly link you can see on your screen. And the moderators have already, I can see James has already posted that link. So thank you, James. Also, if you don't want to follow along, just watch. Like I said before, it's always a good idea because these recordings are there with you. You can always pause, you can rewatch them, and you can do your stuff. Also, the questions in the Q&A panel and the comments in the chat panel, please make sure that you're respectful and they're constructive questions. Make sure you've downloaded 2019.3 and also have the correct project that was just posted in the chat, and you can see the bit.ly link over here too. Also, just like every time, all sessions that we do are always recorded and all the messages will be seen by Unity. So again, the moderators are actively watching the chat and the Q&A. So please be constructive, please be kind, and let's have a great session. So over here, there's lots of free content. I'm sure you guys already, a lot of you who logged into this session today, you found about this through our Learn site. But if someone's totally new, if you don't know about our Learn site, there's lots of free learning content on the Learn site. And there's also 3 months of Learn Premium that is free. So that's the URL over there, learn.unity.com. Please go over there. Amazing, amazing stuff. And be sure you watch Steven's stuff too that he mentioned earlier. And there's lots of cool content over there. And the best part about the Learn is, I keep learning a lot on the Learn site too, learning a lot on the Learn. So best part about that is I can track my progress. So when I'm doing something, if I'm out of time, I can pause over there or stop over there, and then I can continue back from over there. So that's really, really cool. Also, if you haven't joined our Connect group, the live Connect group, please do that. Like I said earlier, there are some amazing people over there, learners like yourself, all the way from the novice to the experts, and, they're sharing content, they're answering questions. It's a great community. So we highly, highly recommend, and all of us are there too. So we highly recommend to join that. So again, we were going through the session outline earlier. Like I said, we will get to these challenges, and once we have 3 challenges, and they're amazing challenges, and Stephen will be taking those challenges and going step by step with you. So we will get to those in a second. So what are we going to do in the first session? In the first session, we are going to create a link prefab. And then in the 3ds Max project that opened with the integration download, we're going to import the link prefab from Unity, and then we're going to create LODs in 3ds Max. Again, do not worry right now if you're a newbie and if you're wondering what is an LOD, I've never heard that term before, and you can export that LOD into Unity. So we will go through all that. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephen. Stephen, you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm going to walk through with you guys in Unity. The very first thing we need to do is actually we're going to have to download, if you haven't already downloaded the project from the Unity Learn site from the link that was provided in the chat, go ahead and do that now, and I'll show you how to set it up. So I'm just going to quickly, I've already got it downloaded, but I'm going to switch to my, let me share my screen and show you this in Unity. So I'm going to take over. There we go. All right. So hopefully everybody can see this. I actually have the Unity Hub open here, and I've already downloaded and extracted this project. One thing to know about this, if you've attended other previous Learn Lives, quite often you're being given an asset file that you're going to import. This is an entire project. So when you extract it, you're going to have a project folder, which actually is going to have another project folder in it. You know, it's going to be called Unity to 3ds Max, and inside of that is another folder, Unity to 3ds Max. So just to realize that when I extract it, it just shows up kind of twice. So you'll see that there's assets in the library and the packages all in there. So it's a whole Unity project. So what we're going to do in the Unity Hub is we're going to add that. And just to make sure, I'm using 2019.3.15. So that was the version that I most recently downloaded. So if you have a previous version of 2019.3, it should work out just fine. I also realized that that you probably could use 2018, but so you guys know, this is the version I'm going to be using, and hopefully you've already kind of downloaded and installed that. So we'll give a little bit of time if you haven't, but it would take a long time if you wanted to install it and download it right now. So once I've got that extracted, and actually I think that maybe the first step we should go through is to make sure that is, that it is extracted, that you have downloaded it and extracted it. And make sure that you extract that to your downloads folder or wherever you need to grab it from before I add it in there. So perhaps, what do you think, Sandeep? Should we give them some time to download that, make sure that everybody is going, kind of got it downloaded and got it extracted?
Absolutely. So here are the steps, guys, what Stephen just went through. So this may take a little bit, so don't worry. Again, if you have any questions, make sure you put in the Q&A. If you're anyone having any problems, our awesome moderators will answer you. So I know some people are ready to go, but make sure that you've downloaded the right bit.ly link over there, and you click on the Project Materials tab. And wherever your computer is set to download, make sure you look at that downloads folder and you download the Unity to 3ds Max.zip file. And after that, make sure you extract the Unity project from your downloads folder. So let's give them a little bit. I remember even back in the day, when 3ds Max, I still remember that beta version in the, 3ds 4. And it was such a big deal back in 1998. Same thing with Maya, when both of them were. Actually, I forgot to say, have you heard of the software Alias Power Animator?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah, so that was Maya's predecessor, so I used to use that. It was amazing. Yeah.
I do remember when I first picked it up, it was Alias Maya, or Alias Wavefront, right?
Alias Wavefront Maya, yeah.
I remember that, and it was the first, I think it was, you first ran it on, SGI machines or Unix, right?
Yeah. I had an Octane and I had an O2 after that. Yeah. Are we giving away our
yeah, exactly.
ages of it? Lightwave 3D represent, absolutely. You know what? With Lightwave, the one thing I can absolutely say is the renderer from Lightwave looked amazing out of the box.
Yeah,
that was really a particular thing in the software.
Sure.
Okay, I think everyone must have caught up.
Yeah,
Steve,
I see a couple things in the QA, actually. There's one person was saying, where should I extract it to? You can extract it anywhere. I just put it on the desktop for kind of simplicity. You could put it on another drive. I would suggest not like on a thumb drive or something, but wherever you need to. If it usually extracts to your downloads, or the zip file will download to your downloads folder. But then you need to, extract it somewhere else. And I have a little tip where you can actually right-click on the zip file. You can drag it to the desktop, and you'll be given an option to extract, which is kind of a neat little thing. But yeah.
Yeah, you want to take over, Stephen?
Sure. There was actually another question in the Q&A. Here, I'll kind of switch over, and then I'll kind of start with the next step along the process. And even if you're still extracting, I realize that sometimes extracting the zip file will take a little time. So even if it's still extracting, you can still follow along. Just watch what's going on. If you don't have 3ds Max installed, I noticed that somebody was saying that they didn't. You can just follow along. You don't have to go through every step. You can just watch the video and see the process. But you're actually, and there's another question in there. I'm looking at the Q&A. There's a bunch of questions popping up already. So you don't have to create a new, so I haven't started the next step of the process in using the Unity Hub, but don't create a new one. Don't go and start a new one. So don't start a new template. We're going to click Add. So this is the next step in the process with the Unity Hub. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add. So I've got it downloaded and extracted to the desktop. And so I'm going to select, when I go to Add, I'm going to select the desktop. I'm going to select that folder. And if you look inside of it, like I said, there's kind of 2 levels of the same name. So I just make sure that I'm where I can see assets, library, logs, packages, and all that. And I'm going to select folder, right? It's going to say that this is the name of the folder. I click select folder. It's going to add it to the Unity Hub. So I don't even have to go over and click new and create a 3D or HDRP template. It's already going to choose which one. And there's a couple steps to this. So once I get it here, you're going to see what Unity version was used to create this. So somebody was asking about Unity version 2018. Can you use 2018? You can actually go to installs and install the 2018 version if you really want to. My advice is to step up, come up to 2019.3. But since I have it installed, I'm going to go to this where it says select a version. And I'm going to select that arrow, and I'm going to choose which version to open it in, because I have multiple versions in the hub, just in case I need to kind of move forward or move back to a certain version. So I'm going to choose the 2019.3.15 F1. That's the one I have installed. So I'm going to select that. Once that happens, all I have to do is click the project to open it. If you haven't used the hub before, this is kind of the steps. Since it was created in an earlier version, you're going to get this dialog box that asks you, do you want to upgrade the project? And we do. We want to confirm that. We want to upgrade it so it will actually work in this version. You're then going to be probably given another dialog box that's asking you, if you upgrade it, you're not going to be able to go back, which I end up moving forward and not looking back. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes. So that's going to upgrade the project and kind of get everything going. Cool, and that might take a little while. So once it does, it's going to open up this project, and that'll pretty much show you. Sometimes it takes a little while, so I'm kind of stalling while Unity kind of installs it. But you should see the same process. So this might be a good time for you guys to try that out. If you haven't been following along, we can kind of come back to the slides and look at each step along the way. And so while mine's importing, we can kind of take a look at the slides.
Okay, cool. So here are the steps, everyone, that Stephen just went through. So you will open the Unity Hub, and you will select the Projects tab. You'll click the Add button, and make sure you select the right Unity version. You will click the project to open, and you'll confirm project upgrade only if needed. Stephen, there was a nice little question over there. Does it matter if they select what template they select, 3D or HDRP or?
Yeah, because it's a whole project, where the only time that they'll get to that option is when they click new. So they have to click add. You could, go to new and start a new project. I would choose the 3D, but then you'd have to import all the assets and create a whole new project. The way this is set up, it's not set up like asset files. So that's kind of the reason that I didn't really address that in the, kind of in a demo, is because we're not kind of getting to that step, if that makes any sense.
Got it. And also, while people are downloading this, I see a question in Q&A over there. Does it matter what version of 3ds Max they're using right now?
I don't think so necessarily. I know the same process works in 2019. The previous recording or our previous Learn Live used 2019, 3ds Max 2019. I'm using 3ds Max 2020.
Got it.
So I just recently updated to the most recent update, which I think is update 3 or something like that. So, and I walked through the entire process and it all worked. So we should see that process live when we give this demo here.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
And is 3ds Max free? There's another question. Well, if you're a student and if you are a faculty, then yes, any Autodesk product is free for 3 years for you, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But now they've changed their model, or very recently, they are on a subscription model if you are working in the industry or if you're a professional, doing contract work or anything like that. So, but if you're a student, if you're a faculty, then yeah, it's free. All Autodesk products are free for 3 years, which is amazing, I think.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. I think Autodesk is really, not to take it away from Unity's own offerings, but it's really great that Autodesk offers most of their software for free for students, so you can learn.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of an amazing thing. And the same with Unity. I mean, it's great that you can actually use Unity as a, even just as an independent, not even being a student. So that's pretty awesome.
Right. Okay.
I did notice that somebody mentioned something in one of the Q&As earlier, and somebody was asking about exporting animated mesh deformations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll kind of get to that. It was just one of the questions that was kind of lingering out there. And I'll talk about that when we kind of get to that stage. And I would advise, I think it was a person named Daniel that was asking that question. So if I don't address it, please bring that up in the Q&A when I start to talk about the FBX and kind of moving the FBX back and forth from 3ds Max and Unity.
Got it.
We'll discuss it when we get to that point, so it doesn't kind of confuse everything.
And if we, like Steven said, if we tend to forget, please bring it up again, and our moderators will also let us know.
Yeah.
So you want to go through some of these processes over here, Steven?
Yeah, certainly. Just a couple things about the FBX Exporter. So this is our next stage is we're gonna install the package, the FBX Exporter package in Unity. So a couple things about this. It's a great way to manually export objects and their descendants into an FBX file directly from Unity to the FBX file is sort of an intermediate format that a couple different applications can use. FBX is supported by Maya. It's supported by 3ds Max. There's actually a couple other applications that support it as well, but it's a great way to kind of have everything contained in one file. And it's a great way to push back and forth between Unity and Max, and the same thing with Unity and Maya. So it kind of keeps everything contained. And the great thing, the way this works in Unity, is I can just push it back and forth. So and actually, I'm going to take a little pause here. Somebody's saying they're getting errors in Unity, so I might have to address that when we get to a certain point if you've already opened up that. So,
hey Steven, can I tell you a little
history?
Can I tell you a little history of FBX? Maybe it'll be useful for some other people too. So you know where FBX comes from, what it stands for?
Not offhand, no.
So FBX was developed by this company called Filmbox back in the day. And Filmbox used to be a motion capture software, which later on, it was owned by the company Kedara. So I used to work on that and I used to do a lot of motion capture. And that was then bought by Autodesk, and guess what it became? Motion Builder.
Ah.
That's where that FBX file format comes from.
Yeah, if nobody else has heard of Motion Builder, it's another one of the Autodesk products. Boy, I don't remember what version it's at right now, but I know you can still get it. And it's one of the products that are offered, one of the softwares that are free for student use, as well as 3ds Max and Maya.
Amazing program, again, if you want to use that and works great with, Max and Maya and even others.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Next, we're going to get into our challenges. You want to talk about the challenges, Steven? This is the first one.
Sure. Yeah, certainly. So this is sort of the high level of all the our challenges here, but we're going to install the FBX exporter and the FBX integration. So it's kind of the first step of all the challenges that we're going to do is we're going to set up the FBX exporter. So we're going to open up the package manager, install the FBX exporter, and set up the FBX exporter integration. So it's kind of the high level step. So yeah, I think, yeah, there we go. So
take it over.
Yeah, sure. Since I already started, right? So I'm going to switch over. So the very first step is we're going to open up the package manager, and then we'll give you a chance to try that and set it up. So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to take control. Right. So the very first step of this is I'm going to go to Window. So once this is opened, I am going to go ahead and go to Window and go to Package Manager. And then in the package manager, there's a couple things. If generally with this project, the FBX exporter was already installed. So when you open it, you're probably going to see that the FBX exporter is listed. If you just show in project, you might see it in the list, right? I have it right there. If it's not showing up for you, just go ahead and make sure that all packages is selected, like so that you can see every package that's available. And if it still doesn't show up, if you still can't see it on the list, like if you scroll down to FBX exporter and it's not there, you can choose the advanced menu and make sure it says show preview packages. This will make sure that any preview packages, which the FBX exporter is there. But since it's already part of the project, but it's not a recent version, it won't be there. So I think we're going to give a little bit of time so people can open up that and kind of check that out and see if they can find it, right? So let's switch back to the slides.
Yeah. So here are
those are the steps. Perfect.
Right here, just like Stephen mentioned right now, you're going to open the package manager. And once you open the package manager, you select the show preview packages from the advanced menu. So if an older version of FBX Exporter it's already installed, don't worry about that. Just leave it then. Make sure that just like one of the most important steps. I've made this mistake too. That's noted down over there. Make sure you can see all packages in the drop down about the packages list. And if you still can't see it, like Stephen mentioned, just go down, scroll down, and it should be alphabetically. It should be under F over there.
Yeah, cool.
So this is pretty simple step. I think people should have got. By now. Let's switch to the next one. We will actually install the FBX exporter. Stephen, why don't you show them that?
Yeah. All right. So I'll switch back over. And so with this FBX exporter, you'll notice that, like I said, it's in this project. It's already in there, but we want to update this. So if you don't see it says update, if it says install, just go ahead and install to the latest version. I've tested this in this version of Unity 2019.3 and 3ds Max 2020, that the preview 3, this update to 3.2.0 preview 2, interestingly enough, when I was kind of walking through this a couple days ago, it was preview 1. So it just recently got updated, and I walked through it this morning and everything kind of worked out fine. So you should see this update to 3.2.0-preview 2. So I'm going to go ahead and update, right? If you don't see the update button, you see an install button, just go ahead and click install, because that means it just does not show that the FBX exporter is installed. So I believe that I think that is the rest of that next step, right, Sandeep?
Yes, it is.
Kind of install that? Great.
Yep. So just like these are the steps, folks. So you will locate the FBX exporter and you will click install or update to the version 3.1.0. And like Stephen showed, if it's showing 3.2 and preview 2, he's tested it and it works absolutely fine. So but if, and it says at the bottom over there, if the project needs the thing to be updated, you can if you want to. But again, we've tested 3.1 and 3.2 both, and they both fine. So you should be good. So I think that was a pretty simple step. I think we need to keep moving on. We already halfway through. Yep. Yeah. And next we're going to do is set up the FBX exporter integration, and Stephen will show you the steps.
Great. I'll switch back over to Unity here. Right. So hopefully this install and everything kind of went fine for everybody. I haven't noticed that takes quite a long time anyway, but once that's installed, you should see it should say up to date. And I'm going to go ahead and close the package manager window. Through the next step, it's a pretty simple process, but we need to make sure that the integration is set up to go between Unity and 3ds Max. So I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Project Settings. And here's where you'll see the new FBX export settings for the project, right? So you'll see in here, there's a couple different options. The one thing you'll notice is it says integration and 3D application. So this is kind of the most crucial right now, is that right now it's showing Maya 2019 because it really doesn't know exactly what application I want to use. So you may or may not see 3ds Max in this menu. I had installed 3ds Max, but it's not showing up in the menu, which is actually gives me a perfect point to show you that sometimes it might not, and it's easy to add. So I'm going to click this browse window, right, or the browse button right here to find the application, right? Because right now all it's showing for me is Maya 2019. So if 3ds Max is not showing for you, click that browse button, and you're going to find the 3ds Max 2020 application folder, right? It's under Program Files and under Autodesk. That's usually where I find it, right? So Program Files, Autodesk, 3ds Max 2020. You also notice I have 2018 installed, and it wasn't showing up in the menu either. But that's okay. It's easy to add. So I open up the folder, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to find where it says 3dsmax.exe, and I'm going to click Open. Right. It doesn't open the application right now. One thing I want to point out is make sure 3ds Max is not open before you start this process. So you'll kind of notice that if I come down here, I do not have it open, right? If you have it open, it's going to end up opening up a whole different, separate window for 3ds Max, right? So then when you found that, it's going to show that in the menu. There's a couple different options I kind of want to bring up as you see this. It's going to say keep open. I'm going to have that checked. And that just means that while you're using the FBX exporter, it's going to keep 3ds Max open for you. And it's going to actually open it up in the background when we start this integration, right? The hide native menus, there's a native menu in some 3D, in some of the Autodesk applications that allow you to, kind of export to Unity and do that. So it's actually going to, when it installs this integration, it's going to actually hide that native menu so that it installs the FBX exporter menu. So it'll kind of make sense when I get to that point. Then you're going to click this Install Unity Integration button. Now, it's going to install some integration files. It's also going to install a script into 3ds Max. What I usually do is the integration files, you can be put really anywhere, but what I end up doing is I keep it with the project so that if I move the project somewhere, it's going to keep those integration files. I might have to run the update component, this run component updater, if I do move it and it's not, the integration hadn't been installed in the 3ds Max version where you're moving it to, but at this point in time, it would be moving with this project folder. So it's asking, where do I want to save this 3ds Max integration file? So I'm going to select my project, and I'm going to click Select Folder. When it does that, it's going to take a while. So you guys are going to have to be patient, because what's going to happen is it's going to install that integration. It's going to start up 3ds Max in the background. It will take a while. So don't think that something didn't happen when you do that. Once you click Select File, you'll see eventually, like we see now, 3ds Max is starting up. You don't see any indication that it hasn't until it started up. So don't just try to keep clicking the install integration, right? It'll start up for you, right? And then you're going to see, once you see this completing installation of 3ds Max, it'll actually tell you the application will open once the installation is complete. And then I'll click OK at that point. So it actually looked like it opened it up twice, but I think it did. Nope, it opened up once, but all of a sudden it looked like it opened up twice. So yeah, cool. I think that was it for that step, correct?
Yes, that was.
Yeah, okay. So we'll switch back and yeah.
Okay, so everyone, so these are the steps right now, what Stephen just showed. So make sure if you missed a little bit, you can still follow along. So I hope you guys were watching and now you're just following along. So again, you will open the project settings by going to Edit, Project Settings, and you will click on the FBX Export on the left side over there. And after that, you will choose 3ds Max 2020 from the 3D application or anything that you've installed. Now, again, if you don't see it, click on the right, 3 dots over there, just like Stephen did, and locate your version of 3ds Max, whether you have, 2018, 1920, whichever version you've installed. After that, you'll click on the Install Unity Integration. And like Stephen mentioned, please do not keep clicking on it several times, because that may be not good for your computer as well. And you'll choose the project folder to install the integration files. So that'll prompt a window for you. And remember, Max is opening, or 3ds Max is opening in the background. It may take a while because all these softwares are pretty heavy. So be patient with that. It may take a bit. And after that, you can close the project settings window. So let's give them a little bit. This is great. I love, Stephen, the interoperability between all these softwares. Back in the day, it was just FBX, or I know that, when I used to work for one of the studios, FBX wasn't even supported properly, and there was no Alembic. And so we had to write our own. We had to write our own little tool called X to Y. I don't know why.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that used to take our files from Maya to Houdini, and Houdini back to Maya, and so on and so forth. A lot of different things.
Yeah. I actually used I used to use Lightwave, and when I started using Maya to get files to go from Lightwave to Maya, there was no export at that point in time. There was no export from Lightwave to some other file format to get it into Maya. And at that time, Modo came out, and I used to use Modo to go to open it in Modo and then save to a Maya file. But so it's great having an FBX file.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's keep moving on.
Sure.
I'm also keeping a track of our time over here. We still have the other two challenges to do.
Yeah.
I hope everyone's caught up. Again, if you have questions, I can see a few questions pop up in Q&A. So please ask. Our awesome moderators will answer those questions for you and get you caught up.
I think I'm going to open up, or I'm going to address one of the questions about the FBX exporter used even if direct integration, or without direct integration. You can export, Daniel's answering. But you can use the FBX exporter to export an FBX, and you don't have to use the 3D application. As long as you have a 3D application that can use the FBX file, the integration might not work the same. You just don't install the integration. You could export the FBX, and I'll show that the next step. But, this is just to show how to go back and forth with 3ds Max. And there was another question about a texture atlas in this session. It was not part of this session to go into a texture atlas, just to kind of bring that up. So it would be addressed in a different, in some other different session. So
let's talk about some of the limitations, Stephen, so that people know what they can expect when this.
Sure. A couple things about it. Since the FBX exporter is actually using FBX files, it does not support .asset files. And when we get to this next challenge, we'll talk about linked prefab. And instead of using the .asset files, we're going to use a linked prefab to make it an FBX file. So it will not bring an asset file into 3ds Max, but we'll talk about that. The other thing is the bind poses of animated skin meshes are lost on export. So if you have any bind poses, so you have any rigged characters, if you export it back from Unity to 3ds Max, they're going to be lost on that export, right? So also the FBX exporter package ignores name and path changes when converting a model instance. So just make sure that you keep the name the same and the path is the same. So have that all kind of set up before you use the FBX exporter to move it to 3ds Max. Also the FBX exporter package does not support exporting animation for animated lights or cameras. So it's an important distinction that if you animate lights and cameras in Unity and you try to push that over to 3ds Max, it's not going to support that. Now there's kind of workarounds, and you can kind of go into 3ds Max and create animated lights and cameras and move them into Unity. But just kind of realize that the FBX exporter can't bring them from Unity to 3ds Max. So there's some workarounds, but it's really outside of what we're going to teach today, or what we're going to talk about today. And the last one of the limitations is you cannot export UI elements from Unity to 3ds Max. So what that means is if you have UI elements inside of a game object in Unity, you can't push them to 3ds Max and expect them to show up in 3ds Max. So, and we'll talk about kind of the troubleshooting step to that. So If you really get yourself into problems, here's some little tips for troubleshooting. If you really get yourself into problems, you can reset all the 3ds Max preferences, just kind of remove that entire folder. And, with 3D, you close 3ds Max, get rid of that prefs folder, and then restart 3ds Max. All of the preferences are going to be gone, but it should reset things back to default. What I end up doing, I have a little, if I really need some of those preferences back, you can kind of move. There's individual preferences in that folder, and you can kind of open up 3ds Max with a default folder and then close 3ds Max, put one of the prefs back in there. It's a long process, but you can put one of the preference files back in there and restart 3ds Max and see if it's still having the problem. So you can kind of isolate which preference is having the problem. But it takes a lot of work to do that. So you really got to be desperate to make sure that you have some of those preferences back, right? The other thing is, other troubleshooting tips is if the FBX exporter doesn't seem to be working, you can go back and try a different version in Unity. So you can, remove the current FBX exporter and downgrade if you need to. So if for whatever reason the preview isn't working, go back to a previous version in Unity and just go to the package manager, go to the FBX exporter and kind of install a different package, right? And then if you have any incorrect skinning on an animated skin mesh, it might be because you're not in a bind pose on export. So what that means is the bind pose, you got to go back to the original bind pose and then export it. So if you have a rigged character, say, and you want to bring that into 3ds Max, make sure you're on the bind pose. It's the original pose, like the T pose, right, of the character. Yeah. Cool. And then the last one was if you have any UI components in a game object, you want to make sure that you remove that, right? If you have it in the game object that you're going to, send to 3ds Max, what you want to do is either prepare the hierarchy so that no game objects have UI elements in them before converting them. And then once you come back to Unity, if you modify it in 3ds Max and come back to Unity, you can add those UI elements afterwards. You can kind of put them back in the FBX linked prefab once it's created, right? And it'll kind of bring it back. So yeah. And then just so you guys know, when you're importing and exporting, it's really super beneficial to go through and make sure that you're making backups of the prefabs before you convert them. So just so nothing can be deleted on the export, right? So just kind of a helpful thing in general is just to make backups if you need them. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. That's a lot of really cool troubleshooting tips.
Yeah.
Stephen, that's really good. So with that, we are basically in our second challenge over here where we're going to take a nice little simple cube and we're going to import that cube as a prefab model. So you know what, Stephen, I'm just going to let you dive into it. Why don't you take over and just show us what we're going to do?
Sure. I will just go ahead and switch over to Unity and we'll start from there. Yeah. Cool. I'm kind of at the spot where it had opened 3ds Max and I've got Unity open with this project. And I still was at that step where it completed the 3ds Max integration. So I'm going to click OK and close that project setting. So just a couple things about this project that you'll notice. There's a lunar lander that you guys get to play with, and we'll have an additional step where you can kind of use that. But I don't want to make it overly complicated for just to kind of show you the process of moving back and forth to 3ds Max. So instead of using the lunar lander, we're going to end up just making a simple cube that we can go through and modify and kind of move back and forth. So with this, you're going to see that the scene opened, this complete scene opened, and I'm just going to add a simple 3D cube to it. So I'm going to right click in the hierarchy window, and I'm going to go to 3D object and go to cube. Just make a simple cube, right? And what I'm going to do with this cube is I'm going to make it a linked prefab. So doing a linked prefab, like right now, it would just be an asset. And you'll notice that one of the great things is Unity has created a new icon system for this whole workflow, which is really cool. So when you see this cube here, when it just looks like all, just kind of an outline of the cube, you'll notice it's not a linked prefab. So I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to convert that to a linked prefab. You could also export it to an FBX file, but for what we're doing, it's best to just use the convert to linked prefab. When you select that, it's going to give you this convert options. There's a lot you can do with this window. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. There are some people that will rename this cube so that you know that it's a linked prefab, but you're going to see an icon that changes it. And when we convert it, you'll see what I mean. So it's going to say, here's what it's going to export it as, is this cube.fbx. And right now it's going to put it in the assets folder. Some people will actually make a new folder and make it a linked prefabs folder or whatever. If you want to do that, you're certainly welcome to. It'll work just fine in the assets as long as there's no other object in there named the same, right? Don't worry about the source and destination. It's just saying that that's the group or the game object that it's going to be transferring. And then the more important here is the export format. So there's two different formats, ASCII or binary. Just to quickly address the two, ASCII means that it's all in ASCII format. It's all kind of an open code. So you can go through and actually modify your code. You can open up the FBX file in a text editor and modify it. A binary is not. It's a kind of a more machine language, right? So the benefit of the two is ASCII will make a larger file, but it can be modified easily. You can go ahead and just change the code if you needed to. The binary will be compressed, so you can't go through and change that, but it's also going to be smaller file. So it's up to you which one you want to use. I'm going to choose ASCII for this project, and you won't really know exactly what the difference is unless something really goes wrong, right? But you could choose either ASCII or binary. I'm going to keep the compatible naming option turned on. It might change some names of the object just to make sure it's compatible with 3ds Max and Unity, but it'll kind of update you to that, right? So after that's all set, I'm going to click Convert. And it's going to give me this little prompt saying the names of the objects in the hierarchy might change because of this compatible naming. If you don't want it on, you can turn it off here, but I'm going to click OK, and it's going to update any names to make sure it's compatible, right? Once I do this step, you're going to see that the cube has a different icon now. It's now a linked prefab. That icon indicates a linked prefab. So you don't even need to change the name to indicate that unless you really need to do that, right? And you're going to see underneath it, it's going to have, this is what it looks like as the linked prefab, right? So once you've set that up, it's actually exported it to an FBX. I can switch to 3ds Max and import it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Back in 3ds Max, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Import. And under the import options, you now have an import from Unity, right? There's a link FBX, and there's also an import, but I'm going to use the import from Unity because that's what the FBX integration installed. Right, so I'm going to click Import from Unity. If you're not already in your project folder, you're going to navigate to it, whatever folder. If you created a new folder for your linked prefabs, I put it right under Assets. So you're going to see that cube.fbx. That's how I created it. I'm going to click Open, and it's going to say, like usually Unity and 3ds Max by default have different units. So it might tell you that your unit size is different unless you went into 3ds Max and change it. So it's going to ask you, do you want to change the units to centimeters? And I'm going to say yes, because I want to keep the unit size the same. So once you click yes, I'm going to have that cube here in 3ds Max, and I can modify it. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to modify it and show you when I go back to Unity that it updates, right? So anyway, cool. I'm just kind of looking over and making sure I kind of covered everything in my notes here, just to make sure that you guys kind of have everything that you need. So cool. Right. So a couple things with this. I have a couple tips to show you guys. If you guys are new to 3ds Max, one little cool thing I found is if you hold down Shift and press W, you can actually get this little widget that pops up, and you can actually use that little widget to move things around in your perspective view. Just in case you've never used 3ds Max, it's kind of a neat way to kind of work, right? But I'm going to switch to this Modify menu, and I can switch to editing by vertex, right? I can select the vertex and modify them. So I can kind of change my object by vertices if I want to. Another little kind of cool tip, I'm going to go back and undo, is I can select that entire object. And if you go to modifiers and go to mesh editing, you can actually quantify the mesh, which is kind of cool. You can kind of make an editable mesh with different, kind of different size cubes. You can change that quad size. And one reason I'm going to bring this up is when I kind of get to this point where we're talking about LODs, I'm going to modify this and send it back. So I'm going to go to over here on the right-hand side. You're going to see where it says editable mesh, and I'm going to choose vertices, and I'm just going to move one vertice down, right? Or I'll move two, let's say, and then I'm going to export that. I don't need to save this scene because it's really just opening up the FBX file. And I'm going to go ahead and export this and export to Unity. You're going to see two options here. There's an export to Unity and an export to Unity model only.
Hey, Stephen, can I pause over there? Because there was a question in Q&A. Should the export back to Unity show up in 3ds Max file dropdown? And as you can see, Stephen is right on there.
Yeah.
So that's where that is.
Yeah, it should, once you install the integration. Yeah, good catch there, Sandeep. Thank you. You get the import from Unity, but when I go to export, it should see an export to Unity and export to Unity model only. You should see those two options, right? So since if you chose the export to Unity, if you had any animation on this, it would include the animation if you choose this option. This one, if it had any animation, it would just export the model and not the animation. Since we don't have any animation, it doesn't matter which one I choose. So I can choose model only. It's going to export it back to Unity. And if I switch back to Unity, you should see it just automatically updates in Unity. So I see the changes that I made right away, right inside Unity. So cool.
That is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So I know we are
running short on time.
Yeah, but that's fine. That's fine. I mean, what we can do is I can quickly just switch back to where we were. So these are pretty much, some of the steps that Stephen was doing. So convert a cube to a link prefab in Unity. And again, it's okay. Remember that this will be recorded, and you can always watch all the steps back. So Stephen, converted the cube back to a link prefab in Unity. When he did the import to the link FBX, he distorted the cube in 3ds Max. And again, you don't have to do exactly, right now, if you're trying to follow along, you don't have to do exactly all the steps. Just move a simple vertex and then, go to the file, export model only to Unity, and you should be able to, see the effect right away. So again, like I said, I mean, this is recorded, so you will be able to watch all that. But that was pretty cool. I mean, it makes it so easy, right, Stephen? All this.
Oh, yeah. It's a great way to work between the two applications, just simply because you don't have to re-import it into Unity. You're just going into 3ds Max, importing, exporting, and then yeah.
So that was a pretty simple challenge, So again, you should try that for sure. But I really want us to talk about LODs, because I think a lot of people may not even know, who are getting started, what are LODs. So can you tell us?
Yeah. So LODs are level of detail, as it says here. It allows you to use different mesh objects to be displayed in Unity from their distance from the camera. You can set up LODs in 3ds Max and then bring them into Unity and use the LOD component in the game object to set those different distances. So an object can have multiple LODs. Usually it's 2 or 3 LODs, but each LOD can be a combination of different meshes, right? So we don't have to be just one object. It can be a combination. And in Unity, you can actually create a transition between these different LOD levels, so it doesn't pop between each one. So you could have like a full detailed object on one level, and then even just a plain cube or a very simple object as when it's further away from the camera. It's a great way to kind of optimize your game. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And also, there was a question, does it work in Blender?
Yeah, this process, the FBX Exporter, is only meant for Autodesk applications, because the FBX format is really pioneered, or as you mentioned, it was made, I guess, Autodesk acquired it, so and they use it for 3ds Max and Maya. So Unity kind of follows along with that path. So it's not really made for Blender. I guess you could use a version of that in Blender. It just wouldn't work in the same way in terms of the integration. Yeah.
Right. And one thing I would like to say to that, and a lot of people get started with Blender, and it's a great program. And it's very easy once you know one 3D program really well.
Yeah.
I mean, you might get a job in the industry where they might not be using Blender or Maya or Max, and you may have to just switch over to whatever they're using, or even they may be using a proprietary tool at that point.
Right.
So transferring the knowledge over shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah.
But with that, I'm going to keep us on track over here, Stephen.
Yeah.
So why don't you take over, show them how we can create the LODs on our third challenge.
Sure. And I'm thinking for most everybody that's kind of following along, just kind of follow along. And at the end of this, we probably will stick around a little bit and kind of answer any questions. So, and I'm going to show this really quick. So I'm in Unity. We saw the changes that I made, but I'm going to pop back to 3ds Max, and I'm going to show you this really quick. And it's pretty simple to just set this up to show you how it works. But I've got this one cube, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this cube a couple times to make the different LODs. So I'm going to, based on this one cube, I'm going to right click and I can go to clone. There's a couple different ways you could do this. And I'm going to choose copy because I don't want it to be an instance or a reference. And at the same time, I'm going to change this cube to LOD1, right? So I'm going to change the name right there and click OK. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click, clone, copy, and make it, you'll notice that it changed it to 002, but I'm going to make sure it just says LOD2. And the reason I'm doing this is because Unity will use these, this list or these names to, for its own LODs. So the first cube didn't have LOD1 or 2, so I'm going to go over here on the right-hand side and I'm going to change that to LOD0, right? So I'm going to have LOD0, LOD1, and LOD2, right? And at the same time, I'm going to select LOD1, and I'm just going to change the quad size. You notice over here in the modifier list, I have quadify mesh. I'm going to make that smaller, right? And then I'm going to go to LOD2, and I'm going to make that even smaller, right? I'm just kind of, whoop, I actually made it larger. I'm going to make the mesh less dense, whoop, making it more dense. Sorry, going the wrong way. Right. So LOD2 is going to be the least dense, LOD1 more dense. So I can actually go in here and change the numbers if I want. Right. And LOD0 being the closest to the camera, I'm going to make it the most dense. Right. So I have these different objects that are different densities. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them all. I know I'm kind of going quick, but I want to make sure that we stay on track and on time. And I'm going to go to group, and I'm going to select group. And under group, I'm just going to I'm going to take out that 001. I'm just kind of quickly naming it to say cube underscore LOD, whatever name you feel is best, cube LOD group. And then I'm going to click OK, and you notice they're all in the same group, right? And just for fun, I'm going to go through and I'm going to select one of these, and I'm going to grab a vertice. Well, you know what? I'll just switch back over because we're kind of low on time. But you can go to each one and you can change. It doesn't have to be the same object with the same mesh. You can kind of change that. So now all I have to do is go to File and export to Unity. Either one, model only, because it doesn't have animation. And then if I switch back to Unity, you're going to see that it's already kind of changed. And I'm going to expand this cube. You'll notice now it's a group, and it has different LODs inside. The cool thing about this process, generally what it's going to do is it's going to add the component to it, right? It's going to add the LOD component to it. If it did not, all you have to do is click Add Component, select the game object, click Add Component, type in LOD. I'm going to choose LOD group, and then I can just drag this LOD0. Don't select it, but click and drag it over to LOD0 in the LOD group. It adds it as a renderer. I'm going to do the same thing with LOD1, drag it over to LOD1, and then take LOD2, drag it over to LOD2, right? And then it adds those as the renderer. So now when I click on this little camera icon, it's going to move in and out, and it's going to switch. You can actually see it switch to each LOD, right? So you can kind of see that these are the LODs in that group. So when I select the renderer, on LOD0, it chooses LOD0 over here. LOD1, I select the renderer, it chooses LOD1. So it shows you which ones are being chosen. There actually is a cold one if you make another level, but I'm going to just drag this one over to cold. So when the camera moves in and out, it's going to switch to those different versions. If you had a different object, you'd actually see those change. So it's kind of how to set that up really quickly on a kind of a high level, right?
It is. It is. So
Yeah.
I'm going to quickly, for people who still are following along, I am going to quickly show the steps. So these were the steps over here. So what you do is to create the LODs or the level of details in 3ds Max, you will make sure that you have 3 LOD groups of the cube in 3ds Max. You will also export the LOD groups. You make the 3 cubes first and you change the level of details on them, and you put them in a group and you export that back to Unity. With the export, remember, Stephen used the file export model only because we didn't have any animation or anything. And you will also add an LOD group component to each parent object. Now remember, in Unity, you had to, if it doesn't show up, Stephen went into the add component and he added, dragged and dropped those different LODs over there.
Yeah.
And what I love about Unity, how it does it based on camera. It is simply amazing how it kind of, you have that function over there where you can, it almost automates like that. While people are doing that, I know we are almost at time, but while people are doing that, but this is our last challenge anyway, there was a nice little question in Q&A. If you have an original model in Max to begin with, what would be the workflow? You got to import in Unity, make a prefab, then continue back and forth?
Yeah, you can export as an FBX file in 3ds Max and then just drag that. You can actually just save it right inside your assets folder for the project, and Unity is just going to pull it right in. So at that point in time, it's really kind of a linked prefab, and then you can use that to kind of go back and forth. So once it's inside of Unity as an FBX file, it's a similar workflow. You just sort of avoided the step of starting in Maya and then moving. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Maya, Unity to 3ds Max, right? So you just sort of avoided that step of creating something in Unity. So yeah, that's a very typical workflow where you're creating something in 3ds Max and then bringing it in, right? So it's just sort of making sure that it's an FBX file, and then Unity will just bring it right in.
Very cool. So with that, folks, we are at the end of our challenges, and I think we can take a little extra minutes over here, and we'll still hang out and we'll answer any questions. But maybe, Stephen, you want to tell them about what they could do with the lunar lander over here.
Sure. In this scene, you have a lunar lander, and sort of our challenge for you sort of outside of the session is to use the lunar lander in the same process. And then, bring it into 3ds Max, modify it, change it around, bring it back to Unity, and then, kind of experiment with it. It's just a nice way for you to experiment with a much more dense object and an object that has multiple parts to it, right? So it's not just a simple cube. It's kind of nice to move a more complicated object and make LODs with it. So that's our challenge for you, is to try that out and check it out.
Yeah, so please watch the video again. The only reason we did a cube is because, we don't want the process to be slow while we're showing it. But the lunar lander is there in the file. So try the same stuff with it. Please go rewatch the video and try the same steps with the lunar lander and change it around and see how it goes back and forth.
Sure. Cool.
So with that, we've completed our session over here. We're at the end of it. It was right at time over there. We went a little extra over there.
Yeah.
But again, if you haven't joined our Connect group, just a reminder again, please join the Learn Live Connect group and post and introduce yourself. It's an amazing open community, of learners of all different levels, and people interact all the time. They post questions and discuss, and also post their projects. So please do that. We'd love to see you guys over there. Yeah. And that's our bit.ly link to the Connect group. So please, if you don't have it, save it. And it's already, I can see that James is already posted that over there in the chat. And again, thanks a lot to everyone who joined in. We had more than 100 people today. And a big thank you to all the awesome moderators. It's not possible without them. What do you say, Stephen?
Yeah, it's great having them and great support.
Absolutely. So again, do leave us a line, introduce yourself. Like I said, the Connect group is really amazing and it's growing every day, and you'll find some amazing people over there. And one thing I would highly recommend, and I'm sure Stephen and everyone agrees over here, it's a great way to make connections too. You never know where those connections can take you.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Okay, with that,
cool.
We are signing off, but we're going to still stay online and see if we can answer any questions in Q&A.
Yeah.
And chat. And again, this recording will be available.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everybody. And for those of you who have questions in the Q&A, stick around. I'll try to get through hopefully all of them. We'll see.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, but thank you everybody else. If you want to stick around, I'll kind of walk through those, try to get through them one at a time. But yeah, cool. So the first question I see is, where's the quantifier? So let me pop back over to 3ds Max. Am I in the right window? Sorry. There we go. So if you go to, I'm going to kind of start with this cube right here. If you go to modifiers, mesh editing, and you go down, you'll see quantify mesh, right? And once it's converted to that, you're actually going to see the modifiers list. If you select these cubes and you don't see it, I think that's what you're talking about. If you select this modifier list, you can scroll down to where it says quantify mesh, and it'll show up there and you can change the parameters. I think that's what you were talking about, where's the quantifier.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah. So that way, sometimes it just, because when you group them, it kind of stops showing up there. So you can kind of add it back. It's just kind of adding back the modifier list, and then you can change that parameter. Yeah. Hopefully that helps out with that question. Next one, when I exported back to Unity as just a single mesh, it looked fine. However, when I exported the LOD group, it rotated the mesh 90 degrees. I'm not exactly sure why. I don't think mine rotated. There doesn't seem to be a reason why it should, unless something happened with the transform with the LOD group. But I'd have to kind of experiment with that because I don't think that it changed in mine. You could try to reset, look at the rotations, select the game object. When you look at the cube here, notice that when I look at the cube, it doesn't have the name of the object that I created in 3ds Max. But when you select the cube, it actually should show you the rotations here. And you can actually go to each kind of cube and see rotations. So it might have some rotation in there, and maybe it actually did rotate because mine shows 89.98, which is kind of strange. So I can kind of reset those back to 0. And if I, kind of scrub back through, you can kind of see it pops because they all need to go back to 0. So, I could set that. So that might be what's going on there, is it might just for some reason be set to 0 or had 90 plugged in there. I'm not sure exactly why it did that. I'll have to kind of do some kind of testing on that. I'd never noticed that before, but I did notice when I popped in here and looked at each LOD group that it put it as 89 degrees on the X. So maybe that helps. Yeah, cool. Does each LOD have its own material? It should. You could, I'm pretty sure that when you go in there, because each cube in 3ds Max could be assigned its own material, and each material can have its own texture. So you could assign a different texture to a different material for the object in 3ds Max, and then that material should show up. I mean, that is kind of the idea, is that you could have a smaller, a less dense material that's sort of similar. The kind of flip side of that is then you're going to have to have a texture atlas that kind of is adapted to, the multiple levels. So you might have a texture atlas that's a 512, maybe even a 128 and a 1024 or something, so that might be kind of the idea. Yeah, but that is kind of the concept, is that each LOD can have a different material and a different texture. Cool.
Okay, we have 4 more questions. We can take those right now.
Sure.
One of the questions I would love to answer is Daniel's. He's just sending a nice friendly reminder.
Oh yeah, the point cache. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So typically, what you need to do, boy, that's going to be one that's really kind of far out from this. From you're sort of more on the advanced level of doing a point cache. It won't. The FBX format, as far as I am aware, will not support a point cache. So what I'm kind of guessing is that you probably have sort of mesh objects sort of assigned to that. You could export the mesh objects and then modify them in 3ds Max and then bring them back, and they should be sort of assigned to the point cache, if I'm kind of understanding the question properly. But it in itself, the FBX file format will not support a point cache itself. So you couldn't export the entire point cache. If you have like skin mesh objects, it'll keep the mesh, but it has to be at sort of like, say you have a rigged character, for example, and it's skinned and it's bound to a skeleton. You have to go make sure you're at the T-pose. So it's kind of the same idea as you got to go back to the T-pose, sort of the original shape of the object, and then take it into 3ds Max, and it'll kind of, you're modifying kind of the original shape of that. So if you have a point cache that's sort of assigned to a mesh object, or it kind of deforms the mesh object, then you have to go back to the original shape of that, send it to 3ds Max or Maya or whatever application you're using, and then bring it back into Unity, and then it should update that. So hopefully that makes sense as far as I understand the question. Yeah.
Cool. Let's get through the first three over there, and
Sure.
I think it's time to close.
Yeah, I think I answered that first one, so I'm going to go ahead and
Okay.
dismiss that. Hopefully, unless there's any other questions with that. And then I answered the one about material, so I'm going to dismiss that, right? There's option to reduce the LOD in 3ds Max is not there. There's only editable mesh. Oh, and I think I responded to that one too, because that's where, like I said, I went back and you have to kind of go to this modifier list. When you select each cube, you go to the modifier list and then add that quantify mesh back in. So sometimes when you create the new group, it just kind of hides it. So you got to kind of add that back in, but it's still there. Yeah. So hopefully that answered that question. Yeah, I don't know about motion capture workflows. I think that's
Yeah, I was answering that. I mean,
yeah, okay.
I have used, I've taught Motion Builder a lot, and we've used Motion Builder with Maya and also with Unity, and it was
Yeah.
fairly easy. Just with we didn't have the integration. We were just simply doing FBX and retargeting, in Max, and then sending it back. So if it doesn't work sometimes with directly going to Unity, you can always send it to 3ds Max and then send it back to Unity. So that's another
Yeah.
way to do it too. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, I think with that.
Yeah, and just really, Manny says that there's a lot of details to learn. There's so many details to learn. This is just like surface level of how to get it back and forth to 3ds Max. There's a lot that can get you into trouble too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I think that's the end right there. That was a question to me, just answered that too. Okay, thanks a lot again for those of you still hanging out, and we will not be taking any more questions if you don't have any. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Yeah, thanks everybody.